All right, we're going live. We are live. We have a great big group of people on right now, 70 people just to start. So awesome. Welcome, everyone. We've got Trey and Pat and Andre will be hosting this discussion. I'm super excited for this, just as a fan of these guys, and I hope that you enjoy this conversation. This is actually the kickoff of a new show that Andre will be hosting through 2021. Every other Friday, it will be some musical guests talking about creativity, because we thought it would be cool to discuss kind of the challenges of being a creative person, how to get through writer's block, what do you do to get ideas, that kind of stuff. So hopefully it's inspirational and helps you all. I want to remind you to hit the subscribe button, which I don't normally do, and I kick myself every time we do a stream, but we are at 9,966. And if we get to 10,000, I'm going to be giving away a signed Robert Fripp aphorism.
You mean when?
When you get yeah, it's inevitable. So I will be buying a Robert Fripp aphorism for whoever is the 10,000th person. And if someone referred them, they will also get one. Or either person can choose one of a copy of the Trey Gunn, King Crimson transcription book. And I will pay for shipping, even to Europe, which is a treat for some people. Or you can get a signed copy of my new book, Failure to Fracture When It's Done, which actually does feature content from Trey and Pat in the book. So all very exciting stuff. Trey, before we begin, I've gotten a few questions from people about the book. When will it be shipping? When will they get their copies? So could you just fill us in on that?
Yeah, the print that we're talking about, the King Crimson Discipline transcriptions. The printer, yep. What's today? Oh, today's the 1st, of course. The printer shipped on, that's how much partying we did here. The printer shipped to us 3 days ago. So we're hoping to start shipping out by January 7th, 8th, 9th, something like that. And I don't know how long the shipping process will take, but I'm guessing a week and a half.
Right on. Cool. Well, I will be super excited to get my my copy, and I know other people are going to be excited too. So if you haven't already ordered a copy, there's how many left, Trey? A couple hundred maybe?
I hate to say it. It's about 100.
Wow. So about 100 left.
Yeah.
So if you want a copy of the 1980s King Crimson transcriptions in a book, a spiral-bound, beautiful book, we did an interview session a couple weeks ago about this book. The book's $50. It's Beat, 3 of a Perfect Pair, and Discipline, every instrument transcribed in one book. Purchase it on Bandcamp, musicscores.bandcamp.com. So I am going to step into the background now and allow Andre to take control of his brand new show. And Pat and Trey, thank you guys so much for joining us. I'm super excited. I will be on mute watching as a fan.
Hello, gentlemen. How are you?
Hello. Awesome.
We're here.
Happy New Year.
I'm here. You hear me?
Yes, we can.
You hear me? Okay, good.
We meet again. And
yep. And again and again.
It's true. No, it's a friend of mine's been calling this the Brady Bunch effect. We're all getting used to this kind of screen, and we're here to talk about creativity, as we will throughout this year, and we've all been creative. So I'm going to start there, and let's congratulate all the musicians and all the creatives, and who are figuring out new stuff, figuring out new ways to do this. So that's what we're going to talk about. I want to start with, how do you guys start? Let's start with starting. Is there a method that each of you has where you kind of clear your mind? I'm very interested in that lately. Do you do something where you kind of take a walk?
You should go with that. Do you clear your mind?
Yeah, exactly. So
I wake up with a pretty clear mind, so I just get right down to business. I don't want to think about it too much. Just do something and then react to it. So if something's sent to me, that's okay. Nobody's here. I'm on my own. I'll do something myself and give myself feedback, and off we go. It's easy.
Trey,
that that I don't want to say that question, but that concept is it always makes me think of something I heard a while ago, which I return to in my own mind every once in a while, which is there's this kind of myth about, and I don't use the word myth like a falsity, but like an archetype myth of
Legend.
how the universe was created. There's two versions. One, God started with absolute chaos and shaped it, and the other is he started with nothing, and she started with nothing. And I think those are two like big strategies that probably we all use. You know, you can start with a void, or you can start by throwing mud all over the walls, and then then you obviously can't sit in a void, and you also can't just let there be mud on the walls. But those are two ways. What's your favorite one, Pat?
Well, I think I'm a guy who chips away. That'd be my analogy to what you just said. You kind of get a piece of something, and you chip away at it. You like it, you move with it. If you don't like it, you knock the nose off and start again.
Yeah. Which is kind of a mixing strategy too, isn't it? If you have a lot of stuff, like you put a lot of mud on your track and then you peel shit away.
Yeah, you got to get rid of some stuff at the end. Yeah, you just made me think of a story from some other band I worked with where they described not quite liking the mix. It was very, very close. They just asked for a very small adjustment. And the well-known producer guy put his hands up on the faders and pulled all the faders. This was back before automation. All the faders went back to zero. It was like, okay, we'll start all over.
We're going to start all over if you're going to complain.
Yeah.
Yeah. But also, I think what helps is having what do you want to call it? Like having a toolbox or a trash can or a folder of ideas.
Okay.
So that you've always got somewhere to go and grab something, either for starting or just mixing in with what you're working, or if you want something fresh, which means you have to keep track of that. You have to put stuff in there. You have to catalog your ideas.
You mean you have to be able to find it when you need it?
Yeah,
That's
but it
the
doesn't.
problem.
Well, that's if you're looking for a specific idea.
Yeah, that's what happens to me. Oh, Pat and Trey. I could go in my closet and find one of those.
So I find that really helpful to kind of somehow capture your raw ideas and stick them somewhere so that you can.
Yeah.
Trey, you're giving me a good opportunity you're giving me an opportunity here to mention this record, Bandcamp type record, but Lorenzo Feliciati that I did. It's called Portal. And there's two versions, one with the DJ version, and that's my little bucket of ideas. For many years, I just do stuff and throw it in a little folder. And maybe a year-ish, maybe 2 years ago, I started to send some of that stuff to Lorenzo. So there was no intention. It's just scribbling that got focused into songs.
Right. And look what else I have here. Oh wait.
Oh God.
Yeah. I'm going through all my ADATs now.
And
I thought you were going to show me your Christmas gifts.
I see you making sets too.
What is this? I don't even know what it is.
Well, that's an ADAT chart. You just had an ADAT. I saw the ADAT. You know what it is. You've got 3 ADATs, buddy. You got 4. You got multi-track ADAT.
No, but look,
going on there.
Here's Pat and Trey from '96.
That's my old garage.
Coconut, sapple, rooster, submarine, jewelry.
We did all that.
I don't even know what it is. I haven't listened to it yet.
That's great. Well, you've read a couple of fascinating areas. One is the idea of subtractive. So not only is that valuable in synthesis, where you have a waveform and you chop away at it, you filter it, but that's a really great way of looking at it. The two ways, as you said, Trey, throw it at the wall or start with the void. And that's also interesting, Pat. You roll out of bed, Coffee and let's start playing, right? So that's often
Sometimes depends on how quiet I can be in the morning,
right, right.
But
Because
yeah, I do that a lot.
there's always a project that's in the inbox.
Yeah, yeah, pretty much there always is. There's something to do, but
Yeah.
sometimes it's just to explore. Especially, see, I've made this record, several records in my house this year, and I want to change tones. So maybe I go in early. I say, "Hey, I'm going early. It's my house. I'm not early because I am the guy. I'm the engineer, the producer, and the artist." So anyway, I tell myself, get up, get in there, and put another drum kit together, or change the heads, or do
Right.
some of that kind of routine. So there's a process before I start just spewing out stuff. And it's also to confirm I got my signal path ready. Sometimes I recorded a good track for a guy and I didn't have all the microphones engaged. I had the wrong, with this current setup, I've got Pro Tools, but in front of that, there's a UA, Universal Audio Mixer, and that whole other mixer to deal with. So there's all those templates we've created, whether I'm using kit A, kit B with the extra toms, doing a vocal overdub, so they're all different setups. So there's so many places, so many landmines, so many places to go wrong.
Right.
Yeah.
Option anxiety.
And sometimes I just accept it. I got a good take, but the kick drum, the outside mic didn't get to tape, or the one room mic didn't get to, or whatever it was. Sorry, I'll go with that take because the performance beats the sound to me. So if I got a good take, then we make it work somehow.
Glad I don't have to deal with all that nonsense.
How many strings you got?
Yeah, but I only have at the most 2 inputs, and usually I just do one or the other.
I know, because I'm the guy that's trying to turn up your bass and turn your guitar down, and there's only one input.
That's great. Tales from the mixing desk. Well, the another thing you brought up was very interesting is that we're all of an age group enough that you have archival stuff on cassette. Which Trey, I saw you're baking cassettes and but we have stuff on probably on reel to reel cassette, all the way through digital. Tell me, is there something different in your creativity to that point Trey made of? It's great to go back and find that grab bag of old ideas, old riffs, old beats, and we used to be able to just say, oh yeah, there's those tapes, it's right there. Tell me if there's any kind of roadblocks now that we all have dozens of hard drives and all kinds of. How much do you do to streamline
Well,
that?
you have to. I mean, I think the trick for musicians, and I feel like we have a disadvantage to visual artists. I've talked with visual artists, and they don't entirely agree, but you can put multiple ideas on the walls and look at them if you're a visual artist. Whereas with audio, you have to sit and listen to know what's there. So you're only your archive, your toolbox or whatever you want to call this is only as good as you've organized your files on the computer. If you can't find something, well, then it's as good as gone.
Yeah.
So that's a big trick. And right now I'm just archiving, so I'm not too worried about that. But there's a little bit of a challenge for musicians to figure out how to collect their ideas. Do you use notation? Do you write a description? Do you put audio? I record so many little snippets on my phone.
Right.
And then now what do I do with them?
Right. That's
when I go back in there, there's freaking gold for me, but I don't always go in there. And now there's 1,000 little pieces of gold.
Yeah. Yeah.
So to me, it feels like, and I'm still working on my own method, it feels like you have to figure out some reflection and organizing those things, at least by project, like, oh, this is something I would never play with Pat. This is something I would definitely play with Pat. Let's put it in that folder, or, something like that. I don't know. I have this, I don't know that it was any easier in the old days. Was it, Pat?
It was kind of easier because you had a real studio and a real engineer taking care of most of that.
Oh, sure.
Sure. And tape was expensive, so you didn't just roll tape all day.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and you had a big tape on the shelf.
Yeah, and you only had 2 or 3 or 4 of them. You make a whole record with maybe 10 reels or something. It was insane when we did the Mr. Pole record. We brought in a librarian to help us keep track, because you have to make stem mixes, you have to make sub mixes as you go. And then when you get closer to done, you want to pull out the real stuff, but you got to find your way back to it after you've done edits. And Paul had just been working with Yes on Big Generator. And he was laughing because we had, I don't know what, 10 feet of tape reels. He said Yes had a whole truck of those tape reels that they were spending a week looking back for background vocals that they just end up re-singing because they couldn't find the ones they did 6 months ago in Italy. And you say your tracks only take a couple tracks to record, but drums take like 12 tracks, 15 tracks. And man, by the time I've done 10 takes and get a song, I've used up, in the old days, I'd use a whole drive. I'm just blowing through these little drives in the old days. I don't know what I've got, 50 drives back there. So when I started looking for something from 10 years ago, the ADATs are the easiest thing to find. And I had so many, I got to tell you, I just burned them. I just threw a bunch in a big pile and, it was just getting too crazy because they've been melting in the garage. I wasn't going to live with the frustration of carrying them, then pulling them out and finding they were dead. So unless it's had something on it that I recognize, I didn't bother to keep all those.
Yeah.
Is there a notion, Pat, of just, hey, that's the past. I whatever ideas there were, I want to just be starting fresh. Do you lean in that direction, or do you obviously if you've burnt some old stuff, but where do you fall on that? Is it more valuable to say, nope, that's obviously it wasn't cool enough to use then, I'm inventing something?
Okay. Well, the stuff I'm telling you I threw away is from, I guess, the 90s, a lot of ADAT recording stuff. Okay. Right. So you're not going to miss any of that. Okay. When I'm working here, sometimes, the sessions can get so big by doing multiple overdubs, maybe changing the drums, do another take, blah, blah, blah. And then pretty soon you realize, bail on this, save the take that's on the top of the playlist, start all over again, or save nothing, just file that one away. If I can't beat it in a week, I can go back and find it. That's kind of the drag of being able to keep everything. It's too much shit, dude. Like Trey said, you got to listen to it. I sometimes I think I know what it is by the title, but I don't sit there and listen to an hour's worth of music. I'm working on something else. So, I've done this a couple times recently. I did something for PASIC, the Percussive Arts Society. I made a little video and I pulled out some of this stuff I did with Stephen Wilson about 10 years ago. And I wanted to find the master tapes, which I've got them, but finding the correct master tapes, it wasn't easy, man. It took me weeks and weeks even to find the wrong tapes.
Right.
And they were submixed down. I'm trying to go back to an earlier generation. And
no, this is a very real problem. And as you said, real-time listening. If you got to go through an hour of tape, holy crap, if there's 4 projects, it's just impossible. So
you don't really, I don't have time to listen. I mean, I would like to listen to, I'd like to listen to our new Awori record, but I haven't sat down to just listen to it because when do I have an hour and a half with nobody? Hey, let's do something,
Right. Yeah. You seem to, just always be tracking and always a new project.
Sometimes I'm working in the yard. Come on, there's other things. I got to watch the dog sometimes.
All of this is only an issue because of we record. That's it. If we just played music, you'd never think. I mean, there's no concept. You just play it again. Now, okay, you want some? Let's make some.
Yeah, and I think I've talked individually to both of you gentlemen about that. That's a concept that I'm very interested in. The kind of Western world, 100-year-old bubble that we're in, because in most of history till 100 years ago, right, you didn't record anything, you just played music.
Yeah
And still enter 80% of the planet Earth or something, people are just playing music right now in Dublin, in Mumbai, in Nairobi, in Toronto, wherever, and they're just playing. There's no red record light. So that's also an interesting thing. I'm glad you touched on that, Trey. Couple questions coming in. Derek Schulten. How are you, Derek? Derek asks, do you ever try to come up with an idea, then try to play it later and stump yourself and kind of saying, how the heck did I play that? Do you, and do you use sheet music?
Absolutely. And that's why I wrestle with how to keep track of it, because I can record onto my phone, but that doesn't mean I can figure out what the hell was going on, because I don't know. tell what the notes are, but I can't tell necessarily how I played it. And so sometimes I'll make notes, or sometimes I'll just video because I need to see where my hands were because of all the strings. But also, you know, the thing is, there's unlimited ideas. So if you lose one, it's really no big deal. There's another 5 around the corner.
Right. That's some of the greatest advice that I can. I'm keeping that one. No, and that's a great encouragement. That going back to the idea cloud and you know, let's see.
That always works until it doesn't.
That's true. So, expanding hands music asks, and we kind of just touched on this. Trey, how do you archive since these storage formats have changed, and how often do you re-archive? So this, we were just.
Yeah. Well, you know, I just bought this 5 terabyte drive for $130. And so I have 5 of them, and I'm doing not just on this drive, but I'm doing whatever you call it, quintupla backups, and I'm mailing one to my kid and keeping one off site. You know, the old drives die, so you got to move stuff forward. So I don't know how often I do it. I'm not that technical enough to know. I just have backups and keep moving stuff forward. And now, it used to be it had mini drives, but now everything's pretty much on one drive, at least the music stuff. My personal stuff is elsewhere, but I just have an enormous drive, back it up. And I don't know what you do, Pat, but you have so much audio. I do a backup like every time I do something, and I work in Logic. Like every hour I'll just close the session and copy everything over to the the second drive. You probably don't do that, or do you have an automatic system, or you don't do anything?
I just run the risk, man. I mean, I do get paranoid, and even I think it was day before yesterday, and I'm in the middle of a couple of projects, and 4 a.m. the computer just has this long white line going, like, holy fuck, it's trying to download some new operating system or something I don't want. It's like, couldn't stop it. So I was pretty paranoid for a few hours. I get messed up because I back stuff up, and I got backups of the backups of the backups. And sometimes I'm working actually with the wrong take. I've done it even in the last week where I'm going, wait a minute, I thought I already did this yesterday. And then I'm looking and going, shit, I was on that drive. Now I've done updates. You know, I've worked for an hour on the wrong version. So I'm a mess. I need an engineer, full-time, freebie.
But you know what's cool is you're going to be able to solve any problem that comes up anyway.
Huh.
You'll just re-record it.
Well, I hope so. But it's sort of like just finding the family photos. I mean, I get that with Deborah all the time. Where's that? She saw the picture.
Right.
Now I've got it. I know you got it. Where is I'm days looking for it. I give up. And then
No, the pictures thing I thought of too when we talked about our little voice memos on our phones. Likewise, you know, we just have them, and the pictures. I think about this dilemma a lot. You know, I have 5 figures of pictures, and you're just like, wait a minute,
Right.
It can't all be great.
And it's not worth the time actually going through and cataloging it.
No.
So the creative thing, we need to talk about the creative thing. The creative thing would be to figure out, or have somebody figure out for us, how we get all this massive stuff into one place and have it cross-reference itself. So I'm not looking at same files that are a day apart that maybe have one small detail that was changed. And
well, as you said, you nailed it. There's you referenced assistants and archivists and librarians in the studio. So you walk in and stuff is cataloged and dated and timed, and
well,
you
at least
kind of say, hey, that one,
someone else to blame.
Yeah. So that's, again, speaks to the era we're in. Maybe we need some kind of intern situation where people are working online with your drives and helping, you know.
AI.
Well, there's that.
Maybe it's coming. Maybe we don't want it.
Yeah. But humans, you know, I can think of a way of using some of these.
Alex Monday. Let's get Alex Monday over here.
A couple other questions here. This is a good one, and you kind of touched on this a little bit, Pat. What a great answer. You just said, I just wake up and get started. I know I'm compacting your answer there, but Twisted Apple Records asks, how do you carve out time to be creative? And I'll expand on that, because that was kind of one of my questions. Do you gentlemen have anything where you let it happen randomly, or do you kind of say, you know what, it's this chunk of time to this chunk of time? Because there's kids and partners and tasks to do. Or do you how rigid are you on carving out that creative time?
Well, I'm not that rigid. I mean, I'm lucky. I'm just home and I have my space to work, and I can choose. If there's not a deadline, I've got several projects. I can choose who I'm in the mood to, who I feel like I've got something to go with, and I can just step away. There's no clock really running here. And I like working alone. So that's the other thing about having that other assistant, that other fly on the wall. It's not really the same as, see, a lot of this thing about creativity, I got to say, I'm the guy who throws a lot of mud on the wall, because I'll wait till I make a mistake that I like. Sometimes I get lucky and I have a good idea or something happens right away, but sometimes I'm listening the next day and I go, well, that was it. That I had it there and didn't even know I had it. It went by and I didn't even notice it. So
Yeah, I identify with that. I lean that way of just create an environment and start playing, and then oh, nice piece of mud.
But everybody everybody can't do that. I understand. Some people have a regular job to go to, and yeah.
Trey,
I think we're lucky in the way that there's probably more space. I still have to carve out space because of teaching and business and stuff. But it's not like, in my coaching practice, I work with people who are, have full-time jobs and families. And I don't think in that situation, you can leave it up to the wind to blow you. I think you got to make space. And I found there's like two things that really help. One, you really do like this advice that people give writers, getting up in the morning and writing every day. It's kind of painful, but it actually really does work. And two things about it. One, you've made space, and it doesn't have to be that much. It could be 30 minutes. But if you do it regularly, the space kind of starts to have its own energy, so that you, like, for example, for me, sometimes I don't feel like working, or I feel like doing something technical instead of something actually creative, which is technical is easy. That's the easy stuff. But if you don't feel like it, but if you've made a space for it, whether you feel like it or not, like if you just kind of keep hitting that space, whatever, 30 minutes at the end of the day, or it gets easier. And then when you drop into that space, it's just kind of sitting there waiting for you. And it depends on what you want to do. If you're talking about making stuff or like keeping your chops up, if you're just trying to keep your chops up and you don't have much time, I think it's really wise to sit back and figure out what's the minimum amount that I have to do every day to keep it up. And it actually may not be as much as you think. Even it could be, I worked with this guy who's a guitar player and a tabla player in Germany. And he figured that like even 15 minutes a day on the tabla would like maintain something. Whereas, if you're just waiting for the wind to blow you over there, it's tricky. If you have so much going on in your life.
That's another really great signpost of advice. Just that showing up and doing your craft, like just again small increments. And I hear that advice from a lot of people. I give it to students. If you can only play 10 minutes, then do that. Don't wait till Thursday when it can be 2 hours, because it might not work. So that's great. That's great advice. So carving out time. Now, how about I've got a question on when you do hit a creative block, a writer's block. When you hit that, do each of you have a technique? Like for some people, throw the I Ching or do some John Cage stuff, or the Eno cards. I use those sometimes. Pat, what do you do when you're just like, man, do you just walk away from it and have a meal and come back, or?
Oh, yeah, I'll take a walk outside. I'll do that. But I've got the cards. I've got oblique strategy cards, and I've got other. I look for signs, I guess, sometimes. A sign from the heavens. Some email might arrive, and it'll have number 6 on it. I go, hey, we should play in 6. Whatever. Just something arrive. I let these things happen. They happen all the time. You're thinking about something, and then something referencing it comes across your desk, and you go, oh, we could try that.
So it's having your antenna open, just looking. Yeah, okay. Listening for inspiration. Trey, how about you? When there's a wall, when you've just like, oh, man, I just can't get past this part.
I got to be honest. That doesn't really happen to me that much, because I usually have too many things. There's too many things that I can't ever get to. So the wall is usually if something's not working and I really want it to work. It's not like I don't have any ideas. And I think that's, I don't know, it's just maybe from having done it so long, but also like keeping a box of ideas. I feel like there's just always, the kind of walls that I used to run into, which I don't as much anymore, is having a musical idea that's stuck and doesn't go anywhere. That to me is that's more of a practical thing than I just don't have any ideas. Well, if you don't have any ideas, it's no big deal. Just practice or just play,
Okay.
But when you're working on something and it's just stuck and it won't go anywhere, that's a trick. And I mean, that's a real challenge. And what I do is I call up Pat and have him throw mud on it, and then everything's cool. No, one thing that's kind of occurred to me a lot over the last 5 years is that one musical idea is not enough. You've got to have 2. At the very minimum, 2 totally different ideas. And I kind of picked this up from this video editor, film editor, Walter Murch, who actually invented sound design with Coppola on Apocalypse Now, and he did The Conversation, and so he would edit and do the sound design, audio design. And his idea was that a good movie is never one idea. You've got to have 2 great ideas. And then there's a dynamic when you have a piece of music that's just kind of one idea and it's just going round and around, which I could take a break and make a dozen of those right now and be stuck myself. It's just not enough. You got to have a different, some contrast that makes the dynamic. And you get that when you're playing with musicians that you respond to automatically because they're not like you. And but when you're just writing on your own or making stuff on your own, it's easy to kind of get bogged down in this thing that you're just trying to grow it somewhere, and it's everywhere it grows, it's just still the same thing that it was. It's just a single cell amoeba. So bring in some plankton, bring in some parasites and let them swim around the outside.
No, that's
I thought of my quick solution, a serious quick solution, is I change the instruments.
Yeah.
So if I'm working on an acoustic drum set, well, let me pull out a beatbox, just scrub and hit go, and it's going to do something different. And now we can have a new field to play in, So between whether it's a beatbox or a program thing or a wave drum or a drum kit or a piece of percussion, there's a million different ways to just start with something else or move to something else.
Yeah. Well, that's another great intro of just something else, that second idea in the movie, metaphor and or in a song. That's a great point, Pat, to just have Trey said, actually, to have 2 really good ideas in a song, or as Pat said,
I take it back. They don't even have to be good ideas.
Okay.
They just have to be different.
Yeah, yes.
In fact, in a certain way, we shouldn't even worry about whether something's good or not when we're making it, because you don't really know, and you could get it wrong. And I mean, you have to be interested in them, but just 2 things. Okay, 3. Pat wants 3. We'll have
no, that's.
If you have 2, the thing is, if you have 2 that are contrasting, a third one always shows up.
Yeah. No, that's no, but there's a real great meta point that I'm hearing here, which is again kind of non-Western. It's to think on a couple layers at once. Think about, is the rhythm? Wait, let move that around, and then suddenly the piece changes, or bring in another melodic idea. I want to make sure people know too. Pat mentioned it's oblique strategies. Is that what it's called?
Oh yeah, those cards. Yeah.
And for people who don't know, Brian Eno made these set of cards in the 70s, and they were like tarot cards, very beautiful. You could buy them, but now they're an app. Do you have the actual cards or an app?
Okay, I'll tell you. Let me think here for a second. So back in the 80s, when I did a record with Cock Robin, Rhett Davies was the producer. And we'd finished the record, and they decided they wanted to recut one song. So we went back in the studio to cut that song, and Rhett had gone home and come back. And he knew I was interested in seeing the cards, so he had brought his cards back with him. And he pulled, I said, well, here we go. Let's pull two cards. He said, you always pull two cards or three cards, whatever. I pulled two, which was retrace your steps and use fewer notes. So it was great. It said, okay, let's set up the same drum sounds, and we'll just take that one bass drum beat the guy didn't like out of the pattern, and we'll be done. We don't have to go for a different snare sound and chase all that crap. So that was the original experience I had. Then later, when I met Deborah, she knew I was into them. She searched, because I don't think they were quite available easily online at that time. She found some and made them for me. So I have a homemade custom set from Deborah Carter. And then eventually somebody bought me a set. So I have three. Well, I have two.
That's great. So you're fully analog, and I'll plug. There's an app for folks who there is an app for this, but find the cards if you can. You can look at Eno's site or whatever. But if you don't know about these, they're just, as Pat described, these beautiful tools for creatives. When you're stuck, you pick a card or you hit the button on the app, and
Rhett told me one of the projects they worked on, and it might have been Roxy Music or something. He said the two cards were listen to the radio and burn the tapes.
Right.
I don't know how far into the project they were, but
right. It's always good stuff, and I use that a lot too. So that's another tool for creatives if you don't already use that. The app. Oh, someone's asking. The app's name is Oblique Strategies, and it's on any of your app stores. Okay, going back to a couple other questions. Great questions coming in. Here is John Chawner asking, how has working remotely, so this is, this year or so, how has working remotely and separately changed how you create as part of a group? If it has, because you both have done remote work for some time.
This ADAT from Pat is from '96.
Yeah.
So how long ago? How many? Is that 25 years?
Yes, now it is.
About.
So I don't even know what not working remotely is.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, obviously we do, but we've been doing it. I guess now it's exclusively that, right? Have you played with anybody in the last 6 months, Pat?
Well, then we don't want to talk about that. Okay. But yeah. You just made me think, when was the first time I tracked? I was trying to think, first time I tracked alone. It had to be in even the late 70s when you could. Yeah. I can remember having, to go in and play over somebody that would be gone when I was done replacing him.
Didn't you do that Rembrandt's record on your 8-track in the garage or something like that?
Yeah, the first one we did over in Danny's garage in Thousand Oaks, and he made an 11 by 11 room inside his garage. So the washing machines and everything were running just outside the door of the studio. And it was me and Phil and Danny, and they got a mattress, which they could push up against the door to soundproof and then throw down at night so Phil could sleep there, because Phil was living in Minneapolis and coming out for the record. Second record, we did the drums in my house. But that was ADATs by then. The first record, you're right, it was on an 8-track TAC, and about halfway through the recording, Derek Shulman from Gentle Giant was an A&R guy. Who signed the Rembrandts to East West, I think it was called then, or Atco, and they got a small advance. So actually, when we started the record, there was only one overhead mic. We had one 414 we'd use as an overhead, then it'd be the guitar mic, then it'd be the vocal mic. And as they got a little bit of money, they got a 16-track Fostex and popped those first maybe 6 or 8 songs over. and then had to get a bunch of noise gates. They had to get a bunch of noise gates. That's part of why the record has a very brittle sound, the first record, just the way it is, baby, because everything had to be gated. All that tape hiss was crazy.
Which you can fix now so easily. It's amazing.
Not then.
The Trey Gunn remix coming up.
You know, the thing that's for me, I don't know if it's the same for Pat, but for me, doing let's say doing sessions remotely, it's great. I like doing it. I can make it work. I can sound really good. It takes so much longer than if you're just in the room with somebody. For me,
Yeah.
you know, when I'm in the room with somebody, I can kind of feel the vibe if the idea is working or not. So you just throw out bad ideas right away. Whereas when you're working remotely, you follow all those bad ideas into the you know, the pit of hell. And also, I end up doing more editing as opposed to just play it again and get it right. So it's like when you're playing a session in real time with people, I feel like the playing's like 80% playing, 20% sitting around editing. Whereas when I'm working remotely, it's like 12% playing, 88% trying to figure out what's working or not.
Hey, I just thought of the last session I played with real people that I can actually tell you about, which was, do you know the drummer Donnie Wynn? I got to play with Donnie, and I think that was about, let's see, we went to Japan in February with Stickman. It must have just been before that, because by the time I came back, end of February, beginning of March, the lockdown happened. So it must have been the middle, early February. Oh, I had 2 gigs. I got to set in with Tool, so I got to play with Danny Carey for about 5 minutes, not even 3 minutes, and I got to play a whole afternoon with Donnie Wynn, double drumming. Real people.
As soon as that question popped up, I thought, you know, these guys are in that club of, yeah, you've done so much remote music, especially once the 90s. Some of those Crimson records, I mean, you read the liner notes, and yeah, it's a lot of it's been done, you know, and then you get together finally and overdubs and things. Pat, how are you on time? Do you have? Can we go to about an hour? We're about 43 minutes now. Can you do another 15?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's say we got a couple of great questions here. Tell us about you have a new record, right? You have a new record with Deborah?
Yeah. And it's on Trey's label.
Talk it up, buddy. Talk it up. Just came out today. I mean, the pre-sale just went on today.
Okay.
What do you want to know? 12 songs. They're all songs you know. And we've rearranged everything. You know, we do the camp with Tony and Adrian up in the Catskills. So it sort of started a little bit up there. 3 years ago, Deborah did some singing up there. I was across the camp, and people were saying, "Man, your wife's got a great voice." Like, what are you talking about? And find out she was singing. Next year, she sings with me in the room. Now I find out she's singing. We're starting to work on a little material. And then we had this idea for a long time to possibly reinterpret the Crimson catalog. So we started looking at some of that material to remake. And that's the record Trey's going to get or has gotten.
I'm going to post the link in the chat.
That's great.
Okay.
Are the songs a surprise, or can you tell us one or two things that?
Well, you know the songs, but you don't.
Well, come on, say what it is, dude.
Well, let's think. Down the list, there's 2 Hands. There's we did an interesting take on People, Sleepless. We tried some of the ones like Walking on Air and some of the more ballady ones, and they were no better or different. Not that cool, you know. So we went other places. Well, a song we really like was Book of Saturdays. That's sort of an unknown, great song. So that took some while to figure out how we could pursue that one. One Time, Peace, Heartbeat. There's songs, new interpretations. And
but they don't sound like the originals at all.
No. One of the ones I'm actually most pleased about might be Inner Garden, because we didn't actually get drums on the record on Inner Garden. So I've got I think it's a pretty cool version. So
that's great news. And
it's a Valentine's gift for your Valentine. It comes out on Valentine's Day.
Oh, it does.
It is. It's a girly record. It's a bit pink. It's a pink version of Crimson.
Okay, we'll all get in touch with our girly side, which
Well, it's not. I'm not really making this record for you in a way. I mean, I hope you like it,
You'll like
but
it. You'll like it.
you know, we were kind of hoping maybe there's somebody else. Maybe my mom would like it. You know, maybe that's great aunt might actually like King Crimson if she heard it.
right.
If she didn't start with Thrack or Schizoid or something, you know. So.
That's no, I looking forward to hearing it. We got a question here from Cedric Hendricks, our good friend Cedric, and he's saying, great question. How do you get others enthused about your creative ideas? And for example, something like Project X, where some of your grooves were clearly outside the Crimson norm at that point. Is there a discussion there where there's some push and pull? Or
Well, wait a minute. It wasn't outside the Crimson norm. We were the guys. That is the Crimson norm. That's what goes on behind the doors. You know, you're talking about your creativity. That's how we got to the Construction of Light record, was going through the detours that became Project X.
Okay, that's all right. So, well, let's see. Well, Cedric, let's see. Where grooves clearly. Okay, I guess I can't speak for him, so I'm not sure if he meant like Crimson of 5-10 years earlier or something like that. But
Trey can answer the question better. Go ahead.
I don't. I mean, were Robert and Adrian even involved in Project X?
Well, not very much, but
so that's the way you do it. You don't ask the other guys.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just make it happen, and they show up and
yeah, I mean, I think some people are really good about driving an idea along. I mean, Robert's great about driving an idea along until everyone's on board.
Okay.
You know, I mean, I guess you have to pick the right musical ideas for the people that you're working with.
Right.
You know, you can't really shove a round carrot into a square hole, right, Pat? Or something like that.
We don't want to talk about that either, Trey.
Well, you can, but yeah, I mean, I think you.
I think you need chemo here. You get chemo here, we can start talking about the carrot, but I think otherwise.
Well, chemo. I'm glad you brought him up, because one of the questions I had before we wrap up with a couple from these fine folks asking these great questions. You know, out of all the projects you guys have done, and there's so many, it's pointless to try to even list them. People know we're with expert audience here. We don't need to go discography like some of these shows.
They know more than we do.
They do, I know. But K2, wow, for me that's one of the ones that always stands out. There's a special memory. Of course, we were all in Russia in 2008 when you guys did that, so I got to meet Chemo. But objectively speaking, that band has a special kind of improvisatory energy. Tell me about the role of just being a really good improviser in creativity. I mean, just having that as a pool to come from, because a lot of musicians, you know, improvisation is funny for them, but where does that sit in that cloud for you? The improv side as an inspiration to creativity.
That?
I don't know. It's always a little odd to me when people want to talk about this improvisation like it's just like a conversation. You know, it's not as pre-planned as you know, scripted music or charted or rehearsed or whatever. But even within that music, there's improvisation, and I just feel like it's kind of like breathing or talking. It's not. Why do we have to analyze it?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, great! It's like dancing about architecture or whatever that.
There you go.
I'm with you on that, because I'm improv.
Hey, Pat, tell the little story. Was it John Paul Jones who told you about the Zeppelin strategy?
Yeah, sort of. I think I know what you mean. I asked him once because I was listening to a lot of the, it doesn't really matter, but outtake, bootleg Zeppelin stuff. And man, they go off into Elvis songs or whatever. I said, how'd you guys do that? You rehearse that? You talk about it? He said, oh, no. He said, the only rule was wherever one guy went, we all followed. I don't even think he said it was a rule. It's just the way it was, you know? Sure. And that's not always the case. Because sometimes you play and you go out and the other people pull a nail file or some dental floss, right. You know, and then you feel a little suicidal for even throwing your little idea out there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean
Yeah.
there's some deep stuff in that. What Pat's talking about, supporting each other, and if you're just having, it's funny because we'll have like let's just change the subject to dogs, and we could easily have a conversation about dogs, right? That's not there's no We don't have to discuss how we would have a conversation about dogs, right?
Right.
But that's all improvisation is. A topic comes up and everyone's just starts chatting about it.
Yeah.
That's
No.
all there is. There's really nothing more than that. Whether the thing about like this pure kind of improv, or what would we call it? Like we did with the projects, or with
Acid jazz, free jazz, acid jazz.
the music, you can't analyze it while you're doing it. You're just having a conversation. You're not trying to decide whether it's a good conversation about dogs. It's just, now we're talking about dogs. And
Which we're improvising.
it,
Um,
exactly. Obviously we have to be fluid enough to have a conversation about dogs, and we have to have known a dog. And the more dogs we've known, the more interesting it may be. But it's not about being good or interesting. It's just about kind of going for it and interacting.
Yeah. No, I think what I'm experiencing here too is for you gentlemen who I consider just fantastic improvisers, and that's clear to anyone who's heard your projects and the bands you've been in. It's kind of like I saw an interview with Paul McCartney that you make it sound it's so natural to you that you're going, well, how do we talk about this? It's what we do. So, and I get that. And it's kind of like I saw an interview with Paul McCartney the other day, and they're asking about all these songs, million songs, and he just goes, same thing. He goes, oh, you pick up a guitar and have a strum, and Lady Madonna comes out, or in my life, and you just him and John would sit down, and you're like, no, it's not that easy. So again, I get what you're saying, and I think to some people do find it very hard to improvise, and I think that's,
if I try to put myself in their framework, it feels like there's a little switch that just has to be turned on. If they were in the room with us, it would be on in 20 minutes. I guarantee it. Because we would just be, just come on in and we'll talk about dogs. And
no, you're right.
I think it's somehow there's a fear of, you can't be afraid of making any mistakes or playing the wrong shit or playing out of tune, or you just have to go for it. If you want to really find out about improvisation, you need to talk to Henry.
Yeah, maybe we should ask Henry about improvisation. And
I'm in. No, that's a great. But great. This is a great part of the discussion because it really hits home. We've all worked with, for instance, and this is kind of a cliche, but there's truth to it. The classical musicians, we've all worked with classically trained musicians, and not all of them, but very many of them have this issue. They go ahead, play B flat. Play what? Play in that key. Make something up, or don't play in B flat. And there's a real difficult line there for some orchestrally trained people. Pat?
I have to take advantage of this opportunity to point out on our Deborah and Pat record, which is the romantic King Crimson collection. We use the campers, we use mostly the musicians. There were such great musicians at the camp we do up there. We didn't have to look any further. And several of them were here in Texas. And two of them happened to be part of the Houston Symphony, which would be Ara Lee, who plays flutes, and her husband, Colin, that plays oboe. And they did incredible stuff. They did arrangements and some reinterpretations. One time, I'm just goosebumpy about this thing. It's so good what they did. Nothing to do with what we did. It's what they've added. But they actually came to my house. This was pre-COVID, around January, and spent a couple days here, a weekend, I guess, and we recorded more. And darned if they didn't go in the other room and start playing, and let's get the mics in there and record it. And they improvised, and that's piece on our record is actually an improvised. There's no edits or anything. It's just exactly no mixing, really. Just the level of the vocal we added in.
That sounds magical. And yes, when you do have people with that kind of background who can, like Trey said, flip that switch, it's a beautiful thing.
I think if you're trying to improvise in a genre, that becomes that becomes a task, and that becomes a way to judge it. Whereas if we're just talking about dogs, there's no judging it. But if we're talking about dogs and we're on the floor of Parliament, okay, well that's not going to work.
George Clinton or the UK? Which parliament?
Either.
Okay, because they're both pretty funky at the end of the day. Let's see. So a couple of people actually had been asking about improvisation. Tom Payne, hopefully we covered your question there, and a couple of people. So this is something people are asking. Neil Anderson, similar thing about ideas from jamming. So of course people are looking at that. Let's see. So many great questions here. Here's a good one. Robert Wright Stasko asks, what happens if you step into the creative time and there's just nothing there, or it feels like it's bad stuff? And again, you've touched a little bit on that, but that's a real on-the-nose question. What happens if you step into the creative time and there's just nothing there?
Well, it might depend on the situation. Are you on stage in front of people? That's going to be a little different than being in a dark room, in a rehearsal room off Melrose somewhere. So the pointed stick of public ridicule, that's our buddy Robert uses that example. That's how you get pushed out there to do something. You have to do something. So
yeah, you got to bring something to the table. You can't just sit in the void. Otherwise you're just meditating. You're not, you got to make something. You got to play a note. You got to hit a drum. You got to do something. But also you can't do, is this good or not? In that moment.
Said that, yeah.
It's almost like
not the time to do it.
It's almost like a get out of jail free card when you're improvising, because all those mistakes, they blow by. You weren't responsible. You weren't responsible. You were just improvising. So.
Yeah. No, and that to me says it's a whole other Zen level of doing this. Not to use that overused word, but just not worrying about, that didn't work, or that's a good idea, bad idea. That's come up a couple times now, and to me that makes it a real powerful takeaway from this for creative people to kind of say, let me lose some of the judgment. Let me just fall back and trust that the music's going to catch.
Also, and maybe because we've done it so much, if you're on stage completely improvising, half of it is terrible.
Yeah.
Like 10% might be awesome. 30 is probably like doable, but let's say like 30% is not, I don't know. What would you say, Pat? It's
noodling. It's bullshit. It's noodling. And you have to go through that process.
You got to get something going, and then something will happen. But if you're not going, nothing's going to happen.
No, that's an important point. There's going to be a lot of chunk. I want to say a great album title just flew by there. The Pointed Stick of Public Ridicule. That is,
you have to credit Robert. That's not my line.
I was gonna say, is that a specific Robert? Okay.
Oh yeah. And Trey, you just made me think of my. Some of the campers will know Elvin at the camp. When Elvin was about 15, he saw Project 4 when we played in San Francisco. And afterwards, I said to him, "What'd you think?" He said, "A lot of noodling."
Yeah, that's
And those were great shows, actually. Those were great shows. So you just have to. I mean, I think also one of the reasons why the projects worked was the audience was so accepting of us.
Sure. There's a question here that's very interesting. That speaks to what we were saying about training. Schizoid Man says, if you know your scales and chords, improv shouldn't be a problem. And that's interesting because I think, to be devil's advocate, you read interviews by a lot of people who they don't know how to read music. Jerry Garcia or Sonny Sharrock or someone who are brilliant improvisers. They don't know chords and notes. Have any or medium level or any kind of musical training to be a good improviser?
He says no.
I mean, obviously, the more flexible you are and the more tools you have to use, you can, when you see a great orator give a speech off the cuff, it's pretty awesome. But we can still talk about dogs.
Right. Yeah. And
You know,
and not to say that.
and because you don't, I mean, how many scales do you need to know? How many chords do you need to know?
Yeah.
You don't need to know much.
Yeah.
All you need to know is there's dogs with short hair and long hair, and there's
That's right.
fast dogs and slow dogs. Now we can talk about dogs.
I like it. I like it. And not to cast aspersions on those wonderful guitarists who, of course, knew the names of some of what's going on, but they weren't from Juilliard or Berkeley or something. Pat, is that something that you are there? Is it random for you? Do you have people that are great improvisers in your life? Do you go, yeah, they don't know the names of these notes or verses?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. You could just go find a hand drummer probably out in the street of any big city here in the, look to our homeless community and could probably find some great hand drummers
Sure.
that don't read anything, could improvise great stuff,
Yeah, yeah. No, that's another valuable overall thing I think for creativity is again, lose the fear, lose the judgment, and kind of.
Hey, it's not like we're not afraid. He may not be afraid. I'm afraid. I get afraid.
Yeah.
And I worry about, clamps I made, yeah.
Yeah, too general of a word on my part. Yeah, maybe not fear, but lose the
well, it's the inhibitions. I think that's, for at least for me, it's my inhibitions that hang me up from expressing myself, and that's why I think I do better alone, in the dark, by myself, and I can chip away at a piece of clay and beat it up for a while and get it to look like something I would hope it would look like, and then present it.
Yeah, no, that's another important part. Just listening to yourself. Let's see then. Well, let's wrap with maybe one more question. Let's see who's Sonny Sharrock played from the heart and the soul. Yeah, that's right.
Damn, I thought your Sonny Sharrock was going to have a question. I was going, wow, that would be exceptional.
This Wi-Fi thing is unbelievable. And I love playing Kevin Bacon, Degrees of Separation, but Sonny Sharrock played with Herbie Mann, who Tony played with. Did you know that? They both played.
I never knew that.
Yeah.
Now I'll tell you something.
Please.
I bought my first Sonny Sharrock record the same day that I met Bill Forth, maybe the day before I met Bill Forth, which is how I ended up meeting Trey and finding my way to meet Robert and David Sylvia and King Crimson. Sonny Sharrock was the record I was listening to the day before that all happened. I was just experienced for the first time.
Wow.
And I remember, because that's the first time I ever heard that. I was like, this is exceptional stuff.
And we just randomly brought him up. Which record was it?
I don't remember. A blue one. It would have been out in the, let's see, that was 94, right? Trey, 93. So something that came out in the late 80s or early 90s.
With Pharoah Sanders, Elvin Jones, sax player?
I have to look. I don't think it was Elvin, because I would have remembered that.
Yeah, that's a great one if you haven't heard it. But well, how about that? We got into some Sonny Sharrock, which is
and I've only seen him play once, but it was at the tiny little knitting factory in New York, and Vernon Reid was in the audience. I mean, the room is like 20 feet wide, and there he was blowing our heads off.
I might have been.
Trey, is that the same place where you almost got in a fight with the sound man?
It's the same club, but it was in a different spot. It was even smaller. That's right. Yeah, was it Chemo that got in a fight?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's people don't like it when you want surround sound. It's like, can't do surround sound. Yeah, you can. Just put a speaker over there and a speaker over there.
Well, this has been great, gentlemen, and that's a great segue. As we can't thank you enough for being part of the inaugural ball here, but the first of a new year, and some would say a new decade. There's always a debate. Does the decade start on the 0 or the 1? We won't go there. But Vernon Reid actually is one of the people we're talking about for a future show, and
great.
That's a perfect segue. But
hey, I got a question for you to ask Vernon. Can I interject?
Yeah.
Maybe I'll type it in.
Yeah,
I would love.
Well, yeah.
I would love to hear Vernon talk about. It's kind of a complicated question, but
right.
American blues is based in 1/4/5.
Okay.
But West African blues isn't. Why? You get my question? Like
Yeah.
we think of the blues tradition coming from Africa, but that harmonic thing that we think of as the blues, it's not in West Africa. Discuss that with Vernon. I want to hear the answer you guys come up
I
with.
made a note of that, and so I will.
Please.
But we got some great people we're talking to, and this has been a wonderful start to it, and this is what it's going to be about, how you get into the zone of creativity and things you do around it, and you guys have hit some beautiful points. So thank you so much. Thank you, Trey. Thank you, Pat.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
This was awesome.
Thank you, Anthony, in the ether. Where is he? He's somewhere here.
Yeah, sometimes you turn into a banjo. All I hear is this boingy, boingy, boingy sound. But
there he is. But
yeah, hey guys, thank you so much for this discussion. Getting a lot of really great superlative comments. Everyone thanking you too. So really appreciate you taking the time, helping us start 2021 off right. Andre, great job hosting. Thanks for fielding all those questions. I'm really looking forward to seeing the future episodes. I am just as jazzed as anyone in the chat, and I feel just lucky to be here. So thank you, the three of you. Happy New Year to all three of you and to everyone in the chat. Really appreciate it. And again, I'm gonna plug Trey's got Bandcamp site. So he's hosting the new Pat Mastelotto record with his wife Deborah. And that URL is at the bottom of the screen, patmastelotto7d.bandcamp.com. Pat's got a Bandcamp page as well. That's patmastelotto.bandcamp.com. Trey has a few of them. You can just go to treygunn.com. And Andre, he's got his own Bandcamp site. Soon, maybe I'll have my own. But everyone go check out that music. And Pat, I got to say, that version of Sleepless that I heard this morning, wow. It's
Good.
Awesome. I love it. So really impressed with that, and I can't wait to hear the whole record. Also, don't forget the new the 80s transcription book that's on one of Trey's Bandcamp pages, musicscores.bandcamp.com. And hit that subscribe button. We are 20 away from 10,000, so getting really close to spending a lot of money and not telling my wife about it. On some good prizes. So thank you, everyone. We will have a 10,000 subscriber live stream perhaps tomorrow. I don't know. I'm hoping we can be live when we cross it.
let's
Awesome.
do this, people.
Thanks for having us.
All right.
There we go.
I'm going to end the stream now. So see you,
How
everyone.
did you get my
What?
Okay. Well, Trey's got my studio behind him. I wonder what the fuck is going on there. How did you do that?
All right. Happy
Okay.
New Year, everyone. See ya.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.